Coffee's made. I'm getting ready to film all the books I read in April. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Tina, also known as Little T. We have someone who is very intent on being a part of this video. Let's see who it is. You like coffee, Lucy? Yes, you like it? She likes how cold it is. Oh, I like how tasty it is. So today we're going to go over the 8 books I read in April. Some of them were audio books, but I still count that as reading. I like to listen to them while I'm walking or running, and so that just increases the number of books I can get through in a month. So let's get to the video and see what I read in April. What are you doing, Lucy? What's up? What do you want? Do you need some attention? Welcome to this cozy little corner of our bedroom, and we're going to get on with the video that I started earlier this morning when I was making my iced coffee, and I drank that all down, and as you can see I'm on to a different kind of drink now. This is a black raspberry LaCroix. It's just a flavored seltzer water, and we'll crack that open. So my fingernails are really short. Not sure I'll be able to get it. There we go. Have a little sip of that. Nice and cool and fizzy. And I'm finishing up a bite of cookie dough. And that's good. It's a rainy day. It's, like I said, it's Monday. Brian has Mondays off for the summer, so he and I waited for a break in the rain and went up to the clubhouse and worked out on the treadmill because it has rained so much since last night. There was no way I was going to be able to run outside. So we got our exercise in, and then we went to the clubhouse and we each got ourselves a nice cold drink. And now I think I've done enough note-taking and picture-taking so I can talk about the books that I read this month. So out of the 8 books that I read this month, I'm going to start off talking about 2 by the same author, Bailey Cates, and I'll have them up here, one of these corners, where you can see the covers of the books. The first one that I read was Spells and Scones, and Bailey Cates, as you've probably heard if you've watched my videos from previous months, she has written these cozy little mysteries about a girl named Katie Lightfoot who has moved to Savannah, Georgia to open up a bakery with her aunt and uncle. And this bakery is not just a regular bakery, it has a little bit of magic involved. There's a group of women, they call themselves the Spellbook Club, put a little bit of magic into all the things that they do. But it's always a mystery because somehow she finds herself in the middle of a murder mystery. And so they're cute little cozy mysteries, but you're always kind of tied back to the bakery. It's called the Honeybee Bakery. You kind of try to guess through it and think who did it, but almost every time I've been surprised. I think maybe once out of all those times I guessed who had done it. So the 2 that I read this one were Spells and Scones and Potions and Pastries. I'm just going to read the synopsis from the book, from Spells and Scones. When the bookshop next to the Honeybee Bakery hosts a signing for the Savannah radio celebrity's new self-help book, magical baker Katie Lightfoot is happy to provide some delectable desserts. A big crowd has turned out for the event, curious about the book and maybe to sample some goodies. But the final chapter comes too soon for the author when she is found dead at the event. The prime suspect is Angie Kissel, a former witch who's familiar with once Katie's own terrier Mungo. A familiar is a animal or pet that belongs to a witch. So in the instance of Katie, hers is a terrier named Mungo. And like the Honeybee Bakery is named after her aunt's familiar, a orange cat. So Katie is at first hesitant to help, afraid of losing the little dog who has become so important to her. But after a little nudge from Mungo himself, Katie decides to try to conjure up the real killer before Angie gets served. Okay, so that was Spells and Scones, the second book that I read, or no, this one I actually listened to, Potions and Pastries by Bailey Cates. It's been exactly 2 years since Katie and her aunt and uncle opened the Honeybee Bakery, where they serve delicious and bespelled treats to the good people of Savannah. After a dinner celebrating the bakery's anniversary, they all take a stroll along the waterfront and meet Aunt Lucy's friend Orla, a colorful character who has been telling the fortunes of locals and tourists alike for years. The next day, Orla meets with what seems like a terrible accident, but Katie's witchy intuition tells her it was something more sinister. Together with her trustworthy coven and her firefighter boyfriend, she'll race to find out what happened to the unfortunate fortune teller before the piping hot trail goes cold. So, Potions and Pastries, I liked it just a little bit more than Spells and Scones, but I think it's just a personal opinion. All of them I have rated 4 stars. I think I rated Spells and Scones 3.5, but they're all good quick reads and cozy mysteries if you like mysteries. So those are the 2 of the 8 books that I read. Number 3 was Bridge of Souls, and this was the last in a series that I have read by Victoria Schwab. She also goes by V.E. Schwab. And this was a middle grades young adult series. It's fantasy and it's kind of ghostly, but as I said, this is the 3rd in the series of Victoria Schwab's ghostly series. Victoria, the author, she has written 43 books. Wow! She's the product of a British mother, a Beverly Hills father, and a Southern upbringing. Because of this, she's been known to say tomatoes, like, and y'all. And she also tells stories. She loves fairy tales, folklore, and stories that make her wonder if the world is really as it seems. So in A Bridge of Souls, the protagonist, the main character, is Cassidy, and she's a 12-year-old girl who had an accident. That you find this out in the very first book, where she nearly drowned, but she was saved, and since she was saved, she has a best friend who is a ghost, Jacob. And she can see Jacob, nobody else can see Jacob in her family, and so her mother and father actually are kind of like ghost hunters in a way, but they get assigned to do this project where they go to all the ghostly cities around the world and have a series, so like a television series that they're making. And of course Cassidy gets to come along, and as she goes to these places, in this book actually they go to New Orleans. In the previous 2 books they went to Scotland and to Paris, and so she has gone to New Orleans. Let's see what this synopsis says. Where there are ghosts, Cassidy Blake follows, unless it's the other way around. Cass thinks she might have this ghost hunting thing down. After all, she and her ghost best friend Jacob have survived 2 haunted cities while traveling for her parents' TV show. Cass could get lost in all the colorful, grisly local legends. And the city's biggest surprise is a foe Cass never expected to face, a servant of death itself. So once again, this is a ghostly story about Cassidy and her ghost friend Jacob. It's, like I said, it's middle grades or young adult. And for me, just getting into this, well, you're going to hear they're blowing away stuff outside on our sidewalk. So if there's a noise out there, that's what that is. If you are just getting into kind of some fantasy, kind of ghostly stories, for me, it's a good place to start in young adult or middle grades. They're a little bit easier to get into. I really enjoyed this series, and I really enjoyed Victoria Schwab or V.E. Schwab's writings. One of the other books that I have read this month is by her as well. Okay, the 4th one on our list is The Atlas 6. It says it's fantasy and magical realism. I ranked this one with 3 stars. It was a little bit, I guess, just different enough from what I was used to reading. It didn't really catch my fancy that much. I started to read the sequel. I think it's a trilogy as well, and I got started in it but then got sidetracked, so I've just set the sequel aside for now. Not sure that I will read it, but it was interesting enough for me to finish the book, but not one of my favorites of the month. Here's a summary. The story is set in an alternate magical world, and we are introduced to 6 characters through point of view chapters. Each are approached by a man named Atlas to join the Alexandrian Society, a secret magical society that only admits the most excellent magicians of the age every 10 years. It is revealed that the great library of Alexandria was not actually lost. just secreted away and maintained, available to a chosen few of the highest caliber of magical academia. Admission to the society will open doors via its knowledge, with former society members becoming powerful members of business and government. There's our leaf blower outside. Time for a drink. Okay. Little bite of, little bite of cookie dough. I think now he's going the other way. Okay, we'll try again. Admission to the society will open doors via its knowledge, with former society members becoming powerful members of business and government. However, the twist of joining for the group is that at some point during the first year, they must choose to eliminate one person, with only 5 continuing the process. So they start with 6 and they can go down to 5. The course of the book follows each character choosing to join the society, their first experiences there, the relationships formed, and their thoughts about who is to be eliminated. Just one. Okay, our little leaf blower guy has decided to make his way that way and then that way, and maybe he's going to be actually gone for now. So each of these 6 people that have been chosen for this magical society to maybe that they will actually make it to be the 5th one will be eliminated. You get, the story just goes back and forth between each of these point of views. You see alliances among the people that are in there. You see people that are definitely against others, and each of their magical abilities are different. Some are in the physical world, some are in the like mind reading world. One actually can influence nature, plants, things like that. It's a very interesting concept, a teeny bit dragged out in a sense where it's hard to find out what the point, I mean, you know the point is that they're trying to eliminate somebody, but what is the point of this whole society? How is it important? Why is it important? And maybe if I read the 2nd and 3rd in the trilogy, it'll actually become more clear. I looked at some of the other reviews online, and some of them said pretty much the same way I felt, like the first one was not the best in the series, so maybe I should hang on and try the next one. The next one is the Atlas Paradox, and like I said, I checked it out and read maybe the first chapter and then decided to go on to another book that was more interesting. Like I've said before, there's so many books in the world to read. If I DNF, which is do not finish a book and just set it to the side, there's so many more to choose from, so not actually missing out. Okay, that was the 4th one that I read. We've read Spells and Scones, Potions and Pastries, Bridge of Souls, and that was the Atlas 6, a fantasy and magical realism story, beginning of a trilogy, and I gave it 3 stars. It's also young adult. So the 5th one is also in the fantasy realm, and now we are very bright because the sun has come back out. And this is the one by V.E. Schwab. I actually purchased this one on my plane ride back from Oklahoma when I went to visit my family for Easter. And this one's called A Darker Shade of Magic. And it too is a part of a trilogy. It's the first one in the trilogy. The next one will be A Gathering of Shadows. And the 3rd one is A Conjuring of Light. So in this book, the main character is Kel, and there's also like a secondary main character, and her name is Delilah Bard. She goes by Lila, pretty sure. Lily, Lila, something like that. Kel is one of the last Antari, magicians with a rare coveted ability to travel between parallel Londons, red, gray, white, and once upon a time, black London. Kel was raised in Arnis, Red London, and officially serves the Mersh Empire as an ambassador, traveling between the frequent bloody regime changes in White London and the court of George III in the dullest of the London. Officially, Kel is a smuggler, servicing people willing to pay for even the smallest glimpse of a world they'll never see. It's a defiant hobby with dangerous consequences, which Kel is now seeing firsthand. After an exchange goes awry, Kel escapes to Grey London and runs into Delilah Bard, a cut purse with lofty aspirations. She first robs him, then saves him from a deadly enemy, and finally forces Kel to spirit her away to another world for a proper adventure. Now perilous magic is afoot, and treachery lurks at every turn. To save all of the worlds, they will first need to find a way to stay alive. This one held my interest very much, and I did rate it, what's my note say? I gave it 4 stars. So I'm really eager to read the second one in the series. And like I had mentioned before about Bridge of Souls, I just really like her writing, and it's really gotten me off onto a genre that I've never read before. So getting up into these fantasy and kind of magical books has been very interesting because it's not anything I would have picked up before. So gave that one 4 stars. That was the 5th book of the month. The 6th one is kind of a fun story. It's called A Pho Love Story. Now, pho is spelled P-H-O. So we phonetic people who taught 2nd grade would have pronounced that faux love story, but it's actually pronounced pho, and my daughter made sure that I knew that when we went to go eat some pho. And it's a delicious, noodly, brothy, very flavorful soup. A Pho Love Story is a sweet, young adult contemporary romance about family, community, and finding your own path. Lynn and Bao have grown up in competing pho restaurants across the street, aware of a bitter, that's really hard to say, aware of a bitter rivalry between their parents, though not knowing what started it. Bao feels a bit directionless, knowing he will need to decide on his future, but not quite sure where he wants to go. He participates in the school newspaper with the same attitude, that is, until he is given an assignment with Lynn to review restaurants while she illustrates them. Lynn is feeling crushed under the weight of her parents' expectation. She loves art and wants to forge her career with this thing that she loves, but they are determined that she's going to be an engineer. She struggles with defining her own path and maintaining her relationship with her parents while working so many hours at the restaurant that she may miss some important art things. As she takes the assignment with Bao, they know that they should not be spending time together, but despite their family's animosity, they are each drawn to the other. As the story goes along, again, each chapter goes from the point of view of Lynn and Bao. You start to untangle and find out what has happened between these two families and why there's such a bitter rivalry. And as these kids get ready to end their high school careers and go on to college, you see them grow together and, unearth these secrets. And, you go through the whole feeling as if you can remember all the way back to high school what it was, everything seemed to be so important, and writing on that one decision of, what are you going to do? Who are you going to be when you grow up? And then, having to get along with your families, participating, working in the restaurants with your families to help them make ends meet. It was a cute story. I gave it 3.5 stars. The 7th and 8th books that I read fit into the genre that I really care about, and that's just regular fiction and historical fiction. They are a lot of the books that I have mostly read as an adult, and I really get into a story that has things to do with family relationships, stories of families, and things that are set in historical times, so I actually can learn about something from history, but it's set into, the novel is fictionalized, but you're learning about a family, or in the midst of a family drama, things like that. So the first one is a book that I've seen the title of so many times over the past years and just never have picked it up. I've actually never read a book by this author, but it's called What Alice Forgot. It's by Liane Moriarity, and this is probably the oldest book that I read. I think it was published in 2010, and she's written other books that, when I was reading about this book, have been rated higher, and some have been actually made into TV movies or HBO movies or something like that. What Alice Forgot, I gave 4.5 stars to. It reads really quickly, and what happens is Alice is actually at a gym and she falls off the equipment and conks her head, and when she comes to, she believes that she's back in 1998 when it was actually 2008, and she has forgotten that whole span of 10 years in between there. She wakes up and she thinks she's pregnant with her first child, when in fact she already has had 3 children. She thinks that, she's newly married and working on renovating this house, when in fact that house has been completely renovated. And she and her sister, she believes they have a really tight, close relationship, and she can't understand why she and her sister don't seem close. It's really kind of, if you can put yourself in the position, which, me being very empathetic, it's easy for me to put myself in other people's shoes and get into the story like that. What it would really be like to have a huge gap of 10 years in your life, and then all of a sudden you have these 3 children that are grown already, and they aren't even babies anymore. You just totally didn't even remember their babyhood, and you don't even, she's in this gym. She wasn't even a gym going person, and why is she going to the gym here in this part of her life? And you can see the clouds have come over again, and now we're getting dark again. Let's take another drink. So the whole story is going back and forth and trying to get her memory back, and people assuming she's getting her memory back, including her mom and, you know, friends and her husband, who you can kind of see some things that have been going on in the marriage. And it's just very interesting to see what she remembers and what she doesn't, and then how this whole story kind of unwinds to find out what kind of a person she has become when she's nearly 40 years old, and in her mind she was still just, you know, in her 20s. So very interesting. What Alice Forgot. The 8th and final book that I read this past month is Hang the Moon by Jeanette Walls. And I've read one other book by her before that's called what is it called? I just looked this up. The Glass Castle. And that's more of a memoir about her life. That's an excellent book, by the way, if you like to read memoirs. Memoirs. Hang the Moon is a historical fiction book, and it's about Virginia back in the times of the Prohibitions, around the 1920s. And it's the story, a really dramatic story of the family that the protagonist, Sally Kincaid, grows up in. Let me read just a little synopsis here. Sally Kincaid is the daughter of the biggest man in a small town, the charismatic Duke Kincaid. Born at the turn of the 20th century into a life of comfort and privilege, Sally remembers little about her mother, who died in a violent argument with the Duke. By the time she is just 8 years old, the Duke has remarried and has a son, Eddie. While Sally is her father's daughter, sharp-witted and resourceful Eddie is his mother's son, timid and cerebral. When Sally tries to teach young Eddie to be more like their father, her daredevil coaching leads to an accident and Sally is cast out. 9 years later, she returns, determined to reclaim her place in the family. That's a lot more complicated than Sally expected, and she enters a world of conflict and lawlessness. Sally confronts the secrets and scandals that hide in the shadows of the big house, navigates the factions in the family and town, and finally comes into her own as a bold, sometimes reckless bootlegger. You will fall in love with Sally Kincaid, a feisty and fearless, terrified and damaged young woman who refuses to be corralled. And it's very interesting that when we went on our spring break trip in March, the book that I read then was Prohibition. It was all about Prohibition in Bardstown, which is a town here in Kentucky. And I learned more about Prohibition from reading that book. That was a nonfiction book than I had ever known before. And then this book is a historical fiction book, but it's basically has a lot of information in it also about bootlegging and the whole Prohibition era in this part of the country, Virginia being a neighboring state to Kentucky. So I found it very interesting. It was a quick read. Out of all the books I read this month, this was the only one I gave 5 stars to. And I really love dramatic family stories, and this one having a little historical edge to it made it even better for me. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed catching up on the books that I read in April, and I hope you too are enjoying at least one good book right now. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. You can give this video a thumbs up, and you can also click that notification bell so you know when a new video comes out. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you next time.